Hello, how are you? Well, I thought I'd talk a little bit about knowledge, and I mean spiritual knowledge. And what I mean by that is the sort of knowledge that is very hard to express in words. So, in a way, this talk is about a paradox. And I think paradoxes, is there another more refined plural for paradox? Paradoxes? Paradoxes. I have no idea. In any case, paradox, I think, is as close as we can get to spiritual knowledge through the mind. If I were truly knowledgeable, I wouldn't be here talking about knowledge, and that is a paradox, because if I was knowledgeable, if I was aware, if I was conscious, and I think these words are inadequate at describing what all that could mean. But if I were any of these things to a higher measure, to a higher degree, I wouldn't be talking about them. I wouldn't be teaching them. I would be immersed. I would be immersed in knowledge. I would be immersed in immersion. I would be practicing, and in all likelihood, outside of the realm of words, outside of the realm of the mind. And I think that is a great paradox. This is some kind of knowledge that can't be attained or even retained through the mind, through verbal expression. And that's a subject that I always disagree on with my girlfriend, who very much believes in words as being capable of expressing just about anything, so the sort of the scientific method of inquiry. I think the world is full of, maybe not full of people, but there are many people who are to use this overused awful term, enlightened. And these people are sitting and meditating somewhere, or they're practicing Tai Chi, or they are silent, or they're in the process of not losing what they have attained. And they're certainly not, in all likelihood, wasting their efforts and the precious time that they have in this life on trying to describe something that eludes description. And that is obviously that is a paradox that exists in art, that exists in literature and in music. Good literature can never really reveal the truth about life, but it can certainly it can make you read between the lines, and it can show you the shadows so that you can get an idea of the light. And I think in a way, a mind is a shadow that is capable of describing light, or the idea of light. So in that sense, the mind and words are helpful, just as senses are helpful, because senses can make us realize limitations, and limitations give us ideas of what is beyond those. If I walk along a beach and I look into the water and I see my reflection in the sea, I get an idea of everything that is possible beyond that which is clearly visible. And if I look at the ground, that isn't everything. I know that there is sky somewhere. I can glimpse my face in the water, and I know that it exists possibly eternally somewhere. But this is nothing that can be known for certain, and this is nothing that can really be transmitted here. So the frustration of trying to express what any kind of spiritual attainment, which arguably is an energetic thing, could look like, and then communicate that to someone who might want to find an entry point into it, or who isn't convinced, or who, like my girlfriend says, this is all wishy-washy stuff. And perhaps it is. But I think there is value in the paradox. Yeah, there's absolutely value in pursuing the paradox, and in using the mind as a stepping stone to what perhaps Buddhists would describe as no mind, and the state beyond the mind. But these are all crutches. Crutches. I'm not going to talk about my crutch, but these are crutches, right? And there is value in the crutches, because without them I'd never learn to walk properly. But what I'm trying to say is possibly beware of spiritual teachers, because if they were truly in the know, they wouldn't express the knowledge. They wouldn't have the desire necessarily to express it, because being in the knowledge is more important then losing the knowledge, leaving it behind, resting it, pausing it, parking it, stepping out of it and stepping back into the mind and into the realm of words. And I think it's a loss to the world, perhaps, because maybe the greatest teachers don't teach. Those who know, truly know, don't teach. Those who have found the light stay in it. They don't necessarily shed it, or maybe you can see them and it radiates from them. And then of course, spiritual attainment is different for everyone. It's an ongoing journey. It's nothing that's ever complete. And at least for me, it leaves me feeling fulfilled and extremely limited and small, endless and endlessly small at the same time. Again, paradoxical, but it makes me want to know everything about the universe. And then I remind myself that maybe it isn't for me to know, but that's not good enough. I'm a bit like Woody Allen in Deconstructing Harry, when he goes completely insane and he says he's going to get a rifle and shoot himself. Or he's got to find some answers, and he goes through Catholicism. I think it's Deconstructing Harry, wasn't it? Or was it? I think so. And I feel that I feel the same way. I think even when you touch the light, you are never complete in this life, because the purpose of this life seems to be the incomplete and 1 foot in the complete, perhaps. Maybe physicists feel the same way. The more riddles they crack, the more theories they pose and prove, the more unknowns show up and lurk behind everything, and that great unified theory hasn't been discovered yet, as far as I know. And even when that has discovered, does that answer and solve everything? Or maybe. And then if it solves everything, does it mean that we will know, we will live in that knowledge, and we can make that knowledge a part of ourselves? But I think the best thing about spiritual practice is that once you realize that everything is kind of miraculous, not necessarily in a godly sense, but everything is here, and that in itself is a miracle. Everything is sacred. Everything becomes sacred, and peace becomes the main mission, and destruction and war, at least for me, have become impossible. To witness war and destruction is to witness humanity at large without any spiritual knowledge of consequence. The consequence being, or potentially being, that war is rendered impossible and idiotic, and which it of course is. It's insane. It's insane to have an industry with the aim to end life and to cause suffering and pain. However, it's dressed up as the opposite, but that's what it is. Yeah, so that is a world in which we live, and in that world, in that mess, we can try to sit and find knowledge and then not share it, but live in it. And then we have maybe a second that is eternal, and we have an eternity that is messy and rubbish, in a sense of not being fulfilled or not having arrived. But then, when the realization comes in, and when I can live in the paradox, in between being and not being, and being alive and dead, and being happy and unhappy, and uniting everything, then that eternity is a second, a sacred second that lasts forever. It is something that might be the size of an atom or even smaller, but it can be stretched, and it can endure, and it can't disappear. It's all it needs. It's an opening. Incompletion, incompleteness, paradoxes, there is value in all of that. There is possibly even value in expressing them and not doing something more meaningful, like sitting silent right now, which I could be doing instead, and making a second last. I'm squandering minutes. And I guess that's all I have to say. Beware of false prophets, because there are no prophets that talk. There are no talking prophets. There aren't. The prophets are between the lines. The prophets aren't in the typeface. They're not in the font. They're behind the font. They're between the font. They're not in that thought that is complete, but they're in the unfinished thought. in the thought that has a potential to last forever. They're in the energetic excitation potential, and maybe that's where you should start looking for them. Alrighty, have a nice day.